Planet Earth, home to 3.5 billion people in 1960, in the heat of a Cold War. The world's two biggest superpowers, the United States and the USSR, were locked in an ever-escalating battle to outdo the other. And with the growth of technology, their new goal was the stars. The space race had begun.
The Vanguard going aloft, it is hoped to carry the first U.S. satellite into orbit in outer space. While there has been an explosion on the launching pad, and the Vanguard has been disintegrated before it left the ground. So you have just witnessed what will undoubtedly be a severe propaganda defeat for this country.
Until 2 days ago, that sound had never been heard on this earth. Suddenly, it has become as much a part of 20th century life as the whir of your vacuum cleaner. It's a report from man's farthest frontier, the radio signal transmitted by the Soviet Sputnik, the first man-made satellite as it passed over New York earlier today.
The Soviets dealt the U.S. a crushing blow by beating them into space.
It means they're getting ahead of us, and we certainly need to start working hard to catch up.
But we chose to not stand down. We chose to step up, prove we were the best.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
9, 8,
And so we did.
6.
On February 20th, 1962, John Glenn became the first U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth. This can easily be said to be one of the first milestones into getting a man on the moon. Now that we could get a man to orbit the Earth, we could further push our reaches into space.
Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous.
Roger, 7. You have a go. At least 7 orbits.
For the Soviets, on March 18, 1965, Alexei Leonov performed the first ever spacewalk, spending 12 minutes outside of a spacecraft. To match and beat their Soviet competitors, Ed White on June 3, 1965, performed the first American spacewalk.
We looked back and on the flight plan, Chris actually felt we were ready to go over Hawaii, and that since we were going to lose a portion of the nighttime on the other end of the EVA due to the late launch, he decided to let us go over Hawaii. So I got my go a little earlier than I anticipated.
In 1966, the Soviets took 2 huge steps in their journey to get to the moon. The Luna 9 was the first ever spacecraft to perform a soft landing on the moon, and the Luna 10 became the first satellite to orbit the moon. In that same year, the U.S.'s Surveyor 1 soft landed on the moon, and the space program was getting ready to finally send man to the moon.
I feel that we would have been way ahead of them had we started at the time they started.
Then came the tragedy of Apollo 1.
We interrupt our regular programming to bring you this special report. Here's ABC Science Editor Jules Bergman.
Top Space Agency officials are flying to Cape Kennedy tonight to begin the official investigation into what caused the flash fire that killed the nation's first 3 Apollo astronauts earlier tonight. Lieutenant Colonel Gus Grissom, 42, Lieutenant Colonel Ed White, 36, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee, 31, all died in moments, trapped inside their Apollo 1 spacecraft on top of Pad 34 when it was swept by a flash fire. They died at T-minus 10 minutes into a simulated launch countdown, helplessly trapped inside their spacecraft.
The Apollo 1 mission was supposed to be the first manned mission of the U.S. Apollo lunar landing program. NASA was testing the capsule at 100% oxygen levels to simulate space conditions. With oxygen levels that high, the capsule would have become a mini oven the second a spark was lighted. This was a hard lesson learned by the space program. On April 3rd, 3 months later, the Soviets were met with the tragedy of Vladimir Komarov. He was killed when his parachute failed to open upon re-entry. Both the US and the USSR labeled these men as national heroes and made sure that they would not be forgotten. (1969) Neil Armstrong is chosen to lead the Apollo 11 mission, a mission that would ultimately send man to the moon. America was overly ecstatic about the Apollo 11 launch. The mission took over American culture, and thousands of people went to Cape Kennedy to watch the historic event. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Collins were about to go on an adventure of a lifetime. The media enveloped them and made them celebrities. Basically everyone in America was talking about the Apollo 11 mission. The Apollo 11 crew themselves were getting prepared the month before the launch. It was a stressful time, and the team had to put everything else in their life on hold. For this mission was about as important as any battle during the Cold War. On July 16, 1969, the Apollo 11 crew blasted off from Cape Kennedy. Thousands of spectators cheered those brave men on as they embarked on their historic mission.
Now, my girl, you're so young and pretty, and one thing I know is true, yeah.
The crew themselves were happy they made it into space. They kept highly positive, even knowing that there was a 2 out of 3 chance that they were not going to make it back home alive. It took the crew 3 days, but they eventually reached the moon and entered into a heliocentric orbit, where it orbited for 1 day. On July 20th, the lunar module holding Neil and Buzz separated from the command module and started to descend towards the surface of the moon.
Down, Eagle.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
America was super excited. And so was the rest of the world.
Special announcement. You will be happy to know that Apollo 11 has landed safely.
Oh, here comes Mrs. Armstrong out of her home. Let's go to Texas.
Thank you very much.
Moment of your life, isn't it? No, when I was married, that was the greatest moment of my life.
Do you have any inkling what he's going to say? He wouldn't tell us when he steps out on the moon.
No, I have no idea what he's going to say, but whatever he says, I'm sure it will be worthwhile.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The United States had done it. The U.S. became the first country on Earth to land a person on the moon. While the astronauts were on the moon, they also collected soil samples and rocks to take back to Earth.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out. Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval White House. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with America in recognizing what an immense feat this is. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done.
Nixon was right. The world was proud. Those brave astronauts ventured farther than any man had ever gone before. After spending 21 and a half hours on the lunar surface, the crew departed back to the command module, and on July 24th, the men successfully landed back on Earth in the Pacific Ocean. When the men got back to Earth, they were kept in quarantine for 3 months. But when released, they went on many tours and were praised for the heroes they had become.